Hearing all this, you may be thinking, okay, it's cool that these characters have a character in them that gives me a clue to the meaning of the new compound character. But how am I supposed to know the pronunciation of the new character? And you're right, 火 doesn't sound anything like cow, for example. But don't panic. The vast majority of characters actually comprise two different radicals. One radical, known as a semantic radical, tells you something about meaning of the new character. For example, the 火 in cow. Another radical, known as a phonetic radical, tells you something about the sound of the new character. This type of compound character, formed from a semantic radical and phonetic radical, accounts for over 85% of all Chinese characters. So in most cases, you won't be left without a clue as to either the meaning or the sound of a character. And this makes learning new characters much easier. Once you know the important radicals, you'll be able to guess the meaning of, learn, and memorize very quickly many characters that include those radicals. In fact, many of the compound characters we just learned before are exactly this type of character and include not only a semantic radical but also a phonetic one. For example, that cow may sound completely different from 火, but that's because the 火 is telling us about the meaning of cow, not the pronunciation. If we look at the right-hand side of cow, we see the character cow, which is pronounced exactly the same as cow. And sure enough, this is the phonetic radical telling us what the new character will sound like. As an independent character, cow means to test or to probe, but the meaning of the phonetic radical has nothing to do with the meaning of the compound character it forms, just as the pronunciation of the semantic radical 火 has nothing to do with the pronunciation of the compound character it forms. Let's take another example we just learned. 妈. We know that 女 is telling us something about the meaning of 妈. So the radical on the right-hand side must be a clue as to the pronunciation. And sure enough, the radical is the character 马. The same syllable 马 as 妈, just a different tone. This is an important point to remember. A compound character is not always pronounced in exactly the same way as its semantic radical. Sometimes, as with cow and cow, it is, but other times, as with 马 and 妈, the semantic radical only gives a partial clue about the pronunciation. One more example for now. 晴, as we learned, means sunny and includes the semantic radical 日, sun. On the right-hand side, we see the phonetic radical 清. So, we know that the character 晴 will sound something like 清. Though here, as in the previous example, the tone is different. Let's compare the character 晴 to the character 清. Both have the same phonetic radical, but 清 has the semantic radical 水, water. And sure enough, its meaning is related to water. 清 means clear, just like water itself. And in this case, the compound character 清 just happens to be pronounced in the same tone as its phonetic radical, 清. Alright, now we've got a basic understanding of where characters come from and how they function. Hopefully, we've gone a long way in dispelling any misconceptions you may have had that characters are all just pictures, or that they're too hard for most people to master, or that there isn't a good system for learning them. Before we conclude this lesson, there's one final misconception about characters that we want to clear up for you. This one concerns the number of characters you may need to learn. You may have heard claims that there are tens of thousands of characters. This is technically true, but the catch is that the vast majority of these are archaic, rare, and or only used in specific scholarly fields. In order to be able to read a newspaper or general literature fluently, you only need to recognize about 2,000 characters. And a Chinese person who knows even 4,000 to 5,000 would be considered quite well educated, and knowing even far fewer than 2,000 characters will still take you a long way towards being able to navigate a Chinese language environment. That's